Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. My name is Daria Sanani and I'm a Senior Marketing Manager at Chipio. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. All participants are on mute, and if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the question box in your Zoom control panel. I will bring them up at the end of the presentation. Today, we are going to talk about the next generation supply chain and how to add resiliency to your agile operation post-COVID-19. Our presenters today are Michael Fender, Senior Advisor and Adjunct Professor at HEC Paris. He has spent over 30 years sharing his knowledge and helping companies in the development of supply chain management and logistics strategies, and has published various books on these topics. And on the other hand, I have Sami Chok, Sales Director, Southern Europe at Chipio. Sami has worked for over 22 years in the retail industry in supply chain. He first started his career at Leclerc, then he joined Carrefour, and finally Casino Group and its subsidiary Monoprix. Welcome, Sami. Welcome, Michael. So without any further ado, Michael, it's over to you.
Thank you, Dara. This is my pleasure to introduce this webinar. We propose you to cover three main topics. The first one is to understand the characteristics of the supply chain models in the peacetime versus wartime. Fundamentally, you know, we have four phases. We have what I would call the old normal. And then we have the current phase, which is the crisis phase, so which is COVID-19 phase. The third phase is the recovery phase, hopefully. And then the last one will be the new normal, I would say, the next generation supply chain model. So first we cover with Sami peace versus war. Then the second point is to focus on concrete solutions regarding the crisis phase. And finally, with Sami, we are going to cover some solutions for a next generation supply chain. So if we try to understand peace versus war, Dara, my recommendation is fundamentally to start with the key question, the following key question. Which value do we expect from supply chain management? And here I propose you a model of the 5-pillar value, which is fundamentally here, as you can see, the following 5 axes. The first value supply chain management can provide is satisfying customers by keeping the promise of delivering both products and services. And it impacts, of course, directly the top line of your P&L. The second potential value is cost. Here we are talking about the end-to-end supply chain cost, and the purpose is to minimize this cost, and especially the cost to serve. The third pillar value is the working capital and especially the cash regarding the stock level and to keep healthy inventories. The pillar number 4 potentially is asset utilization. Here the question is, how can we manage our assets in production factories, in logistics facilities, and how to get a high return on investment. And the last potential pillar is what I call sustainability. And as you may know, sustainability has 3 sub-pillars. We call it 3 Ps. So people, planet, and profit in a long-term perspective. So this is potentially the 5 pillars. And my recommendation, as I said before, is it's a strategic process to decide which priorities you decide to work on and to get a competitive advantage. Here, 2 examples, FMCG, so fast-moving consumer goods versus health industry. In FMCG, this is the example of a US client. And when I met the CEO of this company, the CEO told me, hey, Michael, my strategy is to follow the 3C rule. 3C stands for cost, cash, and customer, in that order. And this is why here you see the 1, 2, 3 like this. For a health industry, as you can see here, it's much more sophisticated. And the supply chain model works on delivering all 5 values here. And you see here the order: customer, cash, sustainability, assets optimization, and then cost. So in a peacetime, the strategy fundamentally is to define the priorities of the value you decide to work on. Now, if we look at the war time, which is the current, let's say, situation now, I would say the situation is very, very different. There is a single objective in terms of value creation, which is people. The objective is to take care of people, is to really provide to people, let's say, solutions for them to keep alive, I would say. And I would say whatever the cost is, whatever the working capital impact can be, whatever assets optimization is, and whatever sustainability impact can be. So here, amazingly, there is absolutely no trade-off, there is no priority, there is a single objective. Of course, as we are going to see later on in the peacetime, in the new normal, this is not, let's say, a potential continuing situation for the future. So now with Sami, I propose to provide some concrete examples in order to really understand what this specific crisis phase, how it is characterized.
Thank you, Michel. And as Michel said, one of the key value pillars in supply chain is people. And at the beginning of the war against the COVID-19, the first priority for the supply chain managers was to protect the employees. To give you a few examples of action realized in the warehouses, they had to distribute masks and disinfectant liquids. In terms of organization in the warehouse, supply chain managers had to organize it differently for sanitary reasons. For example, to reduce the risk, the number of employees has been reduced and the tie breaks have been changed to limit the contact. I would like to highlight the collaboration with the unions to find the right solution in the majority of companies. We have seen more difficult cases like in Amazon, which closed its warehouse in France. But in the majority of cases, the unions and the direction had collaborated efficiently. Then for external and transport operation, we have seen new processes. The transport operation have been impacted also by the limitation of the contact between the drivers and the employees on the dock. In our Shipeo platform, we collect real-time data, and we can now measure the COVID impact in terms of dwell time on site and punctuality. To give you some figures, before the crisis, the average time spent by a driver to load or unload was 1 hour and 17 minutes. And during the crisis, we have seen this time increased by 50% due to the health measures and also the lack of employees. And for the store deliveries, the percentage of time growing is worst. The reasons are the same, but the impact was more important regarding the priority made on customer relationship. Then, other thing we have observed during this crisis, it is the necessity to set new priorities regarding the management of flow. Thank you, Daria. First idea, we have all seen the increase of consumption for food rather than non-food or other products like cosmetic and textile. And you can imagine the impact in the warehouses. The manpower have been concentrated on food activities rather than non-food or cosmetic. And the supply chain managers have also to set priorities on the permanent goods rather than promotional or seasonal product to guarantee the availability of, I say, crisis products like pasta, paper, or water. But despite this crisis, guarantees the estimate time of arrival for the truck in the store is more crucial than ever. Why? But to allow the stores to spend less time in the logistic operations and more time in customer relationship. To illustrate this transfer of activities from non-food to food, we have also collected data in our platform. And today, 52% of the trucks in Europe are delivering food or agricultural product. We can easily imagine the impact on the carriers specialized in building materials or automotive. And you can see more details on the other sector in the illustration on the right side.
So thank you, Sami. In order to, before we go to the last part, which is the part dedicated to supply chain next generation, I propose you a quick poll. So Dara, if you, so here we have the proposals we have here. In your opinion, what should be the main priority for next generation supply chain? If you have to do something after the crisis and the recovery phases, what you would decide to do? Opportunity number one, invest in smart automation, or to develop digital solutions to get visibility, or to push to relocate suppliers and production facilities. We hear a lot about, made in, let's say, local supply chain solutions, or to redefine customer offer. So let's start. You can vote now and we see what happens. Don't hesitate and don't be shy. So I don't see yet the results of the poll.
So 60% of people have voted. I'm waiting to hit the 70 bar before closing.
Okay. Okay, the quorum number. Okay, so when it's got, you can show me the results, Daria.
So we are hitting the 70%. Thank you for voting. I'm closing it now.
Okay, and let's see the results. Okay, here we go. Very interesting. So the winner is develop digital solutions to get visibility. Actually, I would agree a lot on that, and we have some solutions to share with you. And then the next one is, okay, push to relocate suppliers and production facilities. I can challenge this point maybe in the future. Invest in smart automation, and then redefine customer offer. I will challenge that as well as just in the next slide. So thank you so much for your input. So now I propose you to work on now the attributes, the components of the next generation supply chain. And the approach I propose you to follow is based on 3 complementary layers of supply chain model. My recommendation number 1 is to work on strategic design. The main topics I would recommend to work for the future is to seriously work on the value roadmap design. That means, you do remember the 5 pillars I introduced just at the beginning of this webinar, and I would advise that you have to work on clarifying the priorities and to make a very strict, I would say, selection of the value pillars to decide to work on. Complementary, I would advise that you follow the fair value approach. Fair value means to offer to customers not too much, not too less, but just what customers need. And I expect in the future, probably, that the needs, the requirements, the expectations of the customers will not be the same as we compare with, let's say, the old normal world. Secondly, I would recommend to segment supply chain models. In the poll, you said that probably we have to relocate production facilities on a local basis. I do agree, but fundamentally, I believe that in the future, we need to have local to local supply chain. That means supply to demand locally based, but we need to have definitely as well global supply chains as well, global to global, global supply and global demand. So we need to have, let's say, multiple supply chain models. Then we have to simulate, to model and to simulate supply chain scenarios. We have to simulate probably shorter route to market to connect supply to demand. We have to analyze optional sources and risk assessment, definitely. And the last point I would say, and I was in a webinar this morning with a financial advisor, we need to financialize supply chain. It's impossible in the future to make decisions only based on volume, tons, pallets, but definitely to work in terms of money. The major enablers, I believe, is number 1 is educating management team. I think the global awareness now with this crisis in terms of logistics, supply chain management for top management is there, but we need to educate them. The second enabler is to invest money in modeling and simulating models. We need to test scenarios in terms of supply chain models. And the last one is, as I said before, to select the scenarios accordingly to your priorities. Complementary to this first layer of decision, the second one is tactical and operational monitoring. Everybody here who is connected to this webinar knows the importance of SNOP, sales and operations planning, and as well integrated planning, business as well, IBP. The main recommendation I would like to make here is before tactical level, that means 18 months ahead on a monthly frequency, versus operational planning. That means 1 to 3 months ahead on a weekly basis, were, roughly speaking, disconnected. And I can tell you, last week I discussed with a client in Germany, and this client told me, Michel, we decided to use now our SNOP twice a month. So instead of, let's say, monitoring tactically once a month our business, now we use it twice a month. And we need to test as well some what-if scenarios based on value arbitration. Enablers, clear governance, roles, missions regarding sales, marketing versus operations, modeling and simulating demand and supply scenarios, and of course, to be able to project stocks. And fundamentally, there is no supply chain management with a robust ERP solution. Complementary, and finally, the last layer in terms of recommendation I have in my mind, and I share it with you, is the excellence of execution. Because at the end of the day, we have to deliver a customer with a product. And fundamentally, I would say the first action I would recommend to work on is to streamline your initiatives on excellence. We have best practices in procurement, in marketing, in sales, in operations, and so on. The idea is we have to integrate them. The second point is we need to work on higher visibility and transparency regarding end-to-end supply chain, and to boost the connectivity of my supply chain, to connect the bricks of my supply chain, and to develop collaboration between shareholders and stakeholders. And the last point is to test, let's say, the robustness of your capabilities. So enablers, I just, let's say, focus on 3 of them. Number 1 is local empowerment. You know, it's something to define my strategy. It's something else to react, to respond to the event based on real time. And local empowerment is key for doing that. The second point is we need technology to trace, to track, and to capture information. And my last word here is we need to integrate end-to-end supply chain, which is stimulated by digital continuity. So which is a major enabler for the performance, for the agility, and for the resilience of my supply chain. So as a conclusion of this slide, we have not to forget that we have to connect those 3 layers. Before it was mostly, I would say, a sort of top-down, you know, I design the strategy, I monitor the business, and then, okay, we operate and we execute. Well, I think the future is not that. The future is absolutely to rebalance strategic decisions, tactical monitoring, and the excellence of operations, and to connect everything. So for me, it's a next generation of supply chain based on those, let's say, focused, prioritized enablers to design and to implement those supply chains. And now with Sami, we see how we could apply those recommendations to the real world in business.
Thank you, Michel. To highlight Michel's ideas in terms of execution excellence, I'm following with a simple idea. Maybe the main learning from this crisis is collaborate more and collaborate better. But collaborate on what? First idea, the visibility and the visibility of the deliveries and the flow. After the lockdown, visibility will be crucial to manage all the pending flows. There are a lot of containers standing in the European ports, and the supply chain manager needs to have the information about the delivery date and hour to avoid bottleneck and the risk of congestion in the distribution center. Visibility with a key performance indicator will also help the supply chain manager to recover a normal level of services to go forward after the crisis. This is the first idea. The second one is transparency. Yes, sorry, thank you. This crisis has created new collaboration between suppliers, carriers, retailers. And for me, the future business continuous plan should be now opened to adapt the plan B in case of future crises or future difficulties, else or for other reason. And during this crisis, we have seen new collaboration to maintain activities. For example, we have seen collaboration between catering, wholesaler, and retailers to sell product in stock rather than throwing them away. We have also seen agreement or collaboration between Carrefour in France with Uber Eats to propose new home delivery services for the consumer who can't go in the store. And another example of internal collaboration from one of our customer, Carrefour Belgium. We have received a nice message to congratulate all the CPO teams about the quality of the estimate time of arrival during the crisis. And this information was very helpful for them to secure and adapt the activities in the store. That is the second idea. The third one and the last one is a digital continuity. It's so crucial to connect all the actors of the supply chain. It's crucial to share easily and quickly the information and the problem in the supply chain. And for me, it's a major key of success to be agile and resilient. You can move on, please. This graph is directly linked to the digital continuity. In the CPO platform, the first step is to collect the data in our multimodal visibility network. We have today more than 500 data sources in 40 countries. And to collect the data or connect the actors, we have a dedicated team who have in charge the onboarding of the partners. With this data, we are now able to calculate an estimate time of arrival and generate alerts to our clients. And now they can anticipate and solve problems easily with this new information. And to be super efficient, we adapt the way to communicate and share the visibility. We propose different solutions, portal, but we can also send alerts by email, SMS, or directly connect with the TMS, Transport Management System, or the WMS, Warehouse Management System. And to conclude, the supply chain manager now can improve his operation with a key performance indicator based on real data.
So to conclude this presentation and then to go to Q&A session, I would like to re-insist on something which is for me absolutely fundamental. We were talking today about next generation supply chain. When you talk about a supply chain model, there are two fundamental dimensions. On one hand, you have the value you decide to deliver to your ecosystem. And the second dimension is the solutions. And I do believe that solutions have to be connected to the value you want to deliver. I believe that in the future, in the next generation supply chain, the value those supply chains will have to deliver is much more sophisticated in the future. And I would say, probably, if you want to have really an, let's say, agile and resilient, let's say, supply chain, you will have to deliver the 5 pillar value you see here. That means you will have to pay attention to customer and cost and cash and the assets you have invested in for running your operations, and then to take care of people, the planet, and to have a sustainable profit. So the first dimension definitely is this one, but don't forget that you have to make your priorities. The second dimension is the solutions. And I think Sami introduced very interesting solutions enabling higher visibility, higher transparency, which are absolutely fundamental enablers to sustain agility and resilience. So, but the future probably will consist of really connecting, I would say, the value you want to deliver versus the solutions, and to have, let's say, business case and to demonstrate the value of those solutions. I do believe those solutions will have a very big impact in the future. Thank you for your attention. And now Sami and me, we are quite, let's say, available for your questions.
Thank you very much, Sami. Thank you very much, Michael. So we are going to start our Q&A session. I see that there are already some questions coming in. I'm starting with the first one. So Michael, I think this one is more for you. Within the list of the potential actions which you presented, which are the most difficult to implement?
Well, I shortlisted, you know, some actions, but I think one of the major one is, let's say, to convince top management and to be sure business leaders are convinced about this approach of value generating from supply chain, and not only to have a supply chain to face a crisis. We need to invent the new normal And we need to have a very, let's say, robust, resilient, agile, and powerful supply chain in the new normal without a crisis mode. So for me, this is the major difficulty in the future. The second one probably is to stimulate collaboration within the supply chain. That means probably to work on how to break down silos, how to boost, let's say, collaboration between people inside the company, outside the company. And then, as I said before, to make the right choices in terms of technological solutions.
Thank you very much, Michael. So there are a lot of questions coming in. So the first one which came in was, in your opinion, do you think blockchain solutions could really bring the visibility in supply chain? And do you think it will be cost effective, especially for MSME industries in emerging countries?
Is it a question for me or for Sami, or?
I think, Michael, you can start with it.
Okay, yeah. Well, the blockchain, yeah, definitely blockchain is an enabler. I didn't list it in my list of short-listed actions, you know. But I do believe today the connection between finance and supply chain is not yet here. So yeah, blockchain is a technology we need for the future. I'm not sure today the prerequisites of this solution is already implemented. So yes, but I would say before going to blockchain, I would pay attention to invest in connectivity, visibility, to better monitor my supply chain. So yes, but not in a short term, I would say, for most industries.
I totally agree with Michel. Maybe more blockchain can be very helpful for the normal operation, but not in crisis operation. For example, in supply chain for customer operation, it can be very helpful. But I agree with Michel. We have a lot of things to do before that regarding the visibility on other solution or other collaboration.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Another question, why are you saying that you don't believe in relocation of production?
Okay, I saw this question in the chat box. So thank you, Dara, for asking the question, because I have an answer to that. Well, it's a question of trade-off. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that we are not going to relocate production facilities and logistics facilities in Europe or even in our country in France. What I'm saying is, we need to have concurrent, that means parallel supply chain models to connect your supply side and your demand side of your supply chain. You need to have different routes to markets. So for some products, for some activities, to be local is a great solution, is the best solution. But for other products, in that case, a global supply chain is the right solution. So it's not 100% one solution versus the other one. No, for me, it's a mix, and it makes our life much complicated. And this is why we need to model, to simulate, and then to be able to monitor, let's say, like an omni-channel, situation. So fragmentation of flows, yeah. So multiple supply chain models.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. So maybe this is more a question for Sami. What digital tools are available today that we could use in our businesses today?
For the digital tool we use in Shipeo, I say we have more than 500 possible data sources. For example, we have a connection with the TMS of the shipper or the carrier by EDI or API. We have also connection with the telematics, the informatic in the trucks, or via Shipeo mobile app. So we have built a hub of data with an interoperable platform. And with this platform, we can collect all the information, all the data, and share it with the global ecosystem from our customer to the suppliers to the carriers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Michael, do you want to add anything to this?
No, it's perfect. Sami's answer is perfect. 100% agreed.
Okay, next question. What do you think will happen in post-COVID-19 world to life science and healthcare supply chains in Europe?
Can you repeat, please, Dara, the question, just to be sure I got it?
What will happen in a post-COVID-19 world, life science and healthcare supply?
Okay. Yeah, that's clear. Do you remember the slide I introduced with the health industry example with the priorities? You know, I think I put customer number one, and then I put cash number two, and so on. So I think definitely we have to assess the risks of shortage, the risks of supply and criticality in that very specific health industry. So this is an industry for which probably we are going to see in the future more relocation of production activities, and then to have shorter road to market and shorter supply chain. The stock management, you know, customer is number one, definitely, no hesitation on that. The second one is cash inventories. Why? Because we have to anticipate peak of demand and to avoid any shortage. And as you know, there is some expiration date as well to manage in that business. It's not a yogurt, but it's something to consider. So managing inventories is quite critical and not so easy. So this is why I think relocating shorter route to market, higher sophisticated inventory management with a safety stock, things like seasonal stock as well. So prediction will be important, even if, as we know, the world is becoming much more unpredictable and uncertain. But then we have some, let's say, new software solutions like demand sensing solutions, enabling to better predict what is not so easy to predict. So this is two major evolutions I envision in that business. So shorter route to market, higher, let's say, sophisticated tools to plan demand, and then to better manage inventories.
Thank you very much, Michael. So next question is a more retail question. So maybe this is going to be for Sami. During the crisis, we have had to deprioritize complex SKUs to maximize production logistic capacity. This could lead to a more streamlined portfolio in the future. What other opportunities do you believe will come out of COVID-19 for supply chain to leverage?
It's a good question, more a marketing question than the supply chain, because effectively most of retailers have had to reduce the number of SKU to be more focused on priority product. But in the future, I'm sure that the assortment will increase, not tomorrow, but in few weeks, because it's a question of business. So in the crisis, we have seen very right decision, a company at the top company level, to reduce the SKU, to be focused on permanent goods. But I'm sure that after the crisis, in few weeks, we will retrieve a normal level of number of SKU. I have an example in Carrefour or in Monoprix. The number of product is increasing by 10% every year. So you can imagine they stop this increase during the crisis, but in few weeks, I'm sure that we will see new range of product, new innovation, and it's a way to collaborate with the supplier to have new product, new innovation. So unfortunately, I'm sure that we will retrieve a number of assortment in few weeks, like before the crisis.
If I may complete, Daria, we have some time?
Yes, sure.
Okay, it's a brilliant question. It's absolutely a brilliant question, and I fully agree with Sami. I will just complete on two sides. My first answer is it depends. The notion of product portfolio depends on your strategic market positioning. Simplification, in many cases, is a great access, and then to simplify your supply chain consequently. But in some cases, the fact you have a big number of SKUs increases the complexity and generates an entry barrier to your competitors. So it's a brilliant question, the notion of how big my SKUs portfolio should be. You need to get a strategic answer from marketing, as Sami said, but then it depends on your strategic market positioning. So if you compare Lidl, Aldi portfolio versus Amazon, that's clear. Okay? Exactly. The second point is a very interesting point, and we are very weak. We are very, very weak on that topic. This is the relationship between, let's say, marketing and product development, from research and development, R&D. I do believe in the future, if you want to have more resilient supply chain and to simplify them, you need to challenge the BOM of your products. The BOM is bill of materials. That means the components. So here we don't talk only about the numbers of the SKUs. We talk about the components of those SKUs, how you design the products, how you assemble them, you know? And we need to have in the future a closer interface between, let's say, production footprint design, supply chain design, and product design. And this is a major collaboration interface in the future. And to be honest, today, we are very, very weak on that topic. So hopefully after the crisis, this is a big motorway, I would say, of improvement.
Thank you very much, Michael. So maybe a question which relates to this final statement is, what is your advice to financialize the supply chain?
Oh my God.
It's a very huge question.
Yeah. Sami, do you want to start?
Yeah, maybe I can start.
Yeah.
There are different solutions to finance the supply chain. There is an internal one with a logistic contribution from the store to the supply chain. An external one with a collaboration with the supplier, with a distribution discount, for example. And for me, maybe the most important is to launch new project, to find a return, a quick return on investment, to create value, to maybe to reduce the cost, because there are a lot of things to do. And reduce the cost is not reduce the quality of supply chain. It's just to be focused on what is important. And we know that supply chain for the retailer is nearly between 3 to 6 or 7% of the margin. So it's a huge, and it's important to have project to reduce this cost and to be more efficient on the operation. So for me, there are different ways to finance the supply chain, internal one, external one, regarding the negotiation with the supplier, and the project, internal project like visibility or optimization of route for transport, or optimization of productivity in the warehouse.
Michael, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say my first advice is to have finance in supply chain dashboard. I mean, my first reaction is, where are the companies who are able today to measure the end-to-end supply chain cost? We don't know how much is it, because of the silo organization, because it's complex, because you have a different ERP solution along the full supply chain end-to-end and so on, and then to recalculate how much is it to serve this customer through this channel with this product sourced in this country and so on. Well, it's a difficult question. So my first advice is to develop, let's say, finance into supply chain. My second advice is to educate supply chain people in finance, and reciprocity is true, to educate financial people with supply chain. I think it should work, because the brain of supply chain managers and financial managers are very similar. We love flows, we love cost, we love numbers, quantitative analysis. So we can work together a lot.
Thank you very much, Michael. So a next topic, which is a little bit different and focused on green supply chain. So the question is, during the crisis, we've heard a lot about environment and supply chain. Do you believe that the next generation might be more focused on green supply chain? How can data help?
Maybe I can start. Yeah, I hope that we will be more green on the supply chain decision. For me, the data will help to measure the carbon footprint of the delivery. I think for me, the first step is to measure, and we improve what we measure. So with data, real-time data, or real data for the number of kilometers, now the supply chain manager can reduce the impact by reducing the route, optimize the route, better fulfill the truck. So for me, the carbon footprint measure is very crucial for all the company. The company have this obligation to measure and to have this impact. but I think it will be more and more important for other company, and even they have the information, they have to build some strong action plan to be more efficient on supply chain and transport. And in Shipeo, we have in the roadmap the carbon footprint measure in our platform.
Michael, do you want to add anything?
No, perfect answer from Sami. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. One question maybe more for Michael. Shouldn't we combine all the models to be more resilient? MRP, DRP, Lean, Six Sigma, and so on.
Well, I'm not sure we are talking here about models. We are talking about solution. MRP is a solution. Six Sigma is a solution. I mean, yes, definitely. There is a big portfolio of technical solutions like this. I think you have to make your own choice. There is a big toolbox, with a lot of solutions. You have to be, again, very careful when you select them and when you decide to implement them. And you have to design your proper, let's say, what I call supply chain operating system. So, large companies, they have their own operating systems in supply chain, which is based on those building blocks. So, yeah, all of those solutions potentially can provide value. The idea is to combine them with your own customized, I would say, approach in terms of toolbox.
Thank you very much, Michael. I will take maybe 2 last questions. So if you have some more questions, send them now. So the next question is, what potential do you see for IoT in supply chain in post-COVID world?
Sami, you can go on.
Yeah, for IoT, for me, we have a lot of things to do with Internet of Things, if we are talking about that. Today, we have the informatics solution to track a truck. I told you telematics, mobile app, or TMS. But with the IoT tomorrow, we can track a carton, a crate, a pallet, and we have the technology to link this data with our platform. So I'm sure that we are just telling the history of IoT in supply chain. In my former experience in Carrefour, we have put some tracker on the rolls pallet because they had a lot of problem with the steel of roll pallet. But the use case can be difficult because it's a huge investment. But I think IoT, we have a lot of things to do with the pallet, with the goods, and especially with the good with a high value, like for cosmetic. And we have, when I was in Monoprix, I had a project with Enkel to follow the sales in the store with IoT, with a tracker in the pallet. So it was very interesting to see how the sales is evaluated in the store regarding the position of the goods in the store. And IoT allows that kind of project. So it's just not a supply chain project, but a sales and marketing project with IoT system.
Thank you, Sami. Michael, do you want to add anything?
No. IoT is the starting point of digital continuity. So absolutely compulsory approach.
Okay, perfect. So maybe one last question for you, Michael. Which supply chain will resist better to this crisis?
Wow. Oh. Well, I mean, we were talking about agility and resilience. So I think agility and resilience are the 2 major pillars of the next generation supply chain. I do believe that supply chain management fundamentally is based on women and men. I mean, for me, supply chain management, of course, is based on strategy, processes, digital solutions. We were talking about that a lot during this webinar. But at the end of the day, it's based on collaboration spirit, the fact you get what I call one team, the fact people are united. So it's maybe my last word of this webinar to say we have to pay attention to people who collaborate, who work to this ecosystem of a supply chain. And those companies which will have, let's say, this collaboration spirit, integration of people, converging to the same goal and sharing data and so on, these companies will be resisting the most, I would say, for the future crisis. I do believe that.
Yeah, for me, the more resilient supply chain is the company who have a complete and maybe global vision of the ecosystem. Visibility is not just a technical response. It must be a state of mind or another way of working. The control tower organization is important, but not sufficient. It's important to have the alert and the right time information at the right level, but having all the indicators in it is not effective. You have to know how to manage the exception, how to know quickly how to solve the problem to come. And for me, finally, to be effective, you have to work differently with the ecosystem, with collaborative workflow solution, for example.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much, Sami. We are finished for today's session. Thank you, everyone, for participating to this webinar. We appreciate you being here. For your information, you are going to receive the recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint presentation after the session. We'll send you as well some additional resources like the infographic, which you have seen in the slides. Thanks again for joining us today. Stay safe. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sami.
My pleasure. Goodbye.
Bye.